Here it is, the final part in this epic saga that is this unboxing. Hey there, welcome to the final part of this unboxing of an order of books that I won at auction off of HipComic from the seller Quality Comics. This is, I believe, part 7 of 7, where I have gone through the entire order, a few books at a time, and have shown you the conditions and really spent a lot of quality time with each book and really learned a lot in the process. I've picked out some books that I wanted to clean and press. Focusing on one seller has really had me dialed into kind of precisely what condition these books are when I'm bidding on them, regardless of the scan, really. Just what the expectations are in terms of condition, where you can almost like bid on the books sight unseen for the most part, not for all books. Some of the books are in worse shape, but those are easily recognizable with a lot of color breaks and other creases and tears and everything. But your standard book that you're like, that looks pretty good, I'm not exactly sure what condition that's in, it's pretty much somewhere just a touch under 9.0 is basically how this is averaging out. But I don't want to spoil the end of this video, which is where I will be putting in my typical order summary once I get through the last 5 books, where I will show a complete breakdown of the total across the entire order, meaning I'll show you how much I paid, but really most importantly, how the cost to acquire all of these books compares with fair market value. I've inputted all the actual grades that I've assigned the books, as well as some of the books that I've pressed, so you can see what the grade was before and after and how that impacted the book's value. And then just overall, again, what is that average for the books that I won at auction in terms of the grade and the potential value if I were to get these books graded. So let's get to the last 5 books that I won at auction from Quality Comics. All right, here we go. I'm excited to look at these last 5 books, but I'm also excited to wrap up this epic order so I can move on to other unboxings. So I want to kind of do more of the same, kind of a rapid fire book review, condition review, and then we will get to the order summary. So let's get the next 5 books out of the order. All right, here we go. The first book is Iron Man number 28. Very cool early Iron Man book with the controller. And I gotta say, I always wondered why villains who have the ability to melt armor don't always just go straight up for Iron Man and attack him. They even had a villain called the Melter at one point. I was like, that's perfect. I mean, Iron Man doesn't stand a chance. And here is the controller right on the front, just melting away Iron Man's face there. So in terms of condition, I picked this up not because I thought this was also a 9.4 or a 9.2, but because I thought it was in decent shape for the age. So I'm allowing for more, or I guess forgiving the book's condition as we go back in time. So this one is a little bit dirty, but really nice at the top, just some general creasing. You know, this book might benefit from a humidity bath. But I thought that the spine was pretty good. Still the same stacking crease that kind of dealing with all of these books here. Handful of spine ticks. You know, the ticks are probably in that 9 to 9.2 range, possibly if I'm being generous. Corner down here is a little soft, so probably already looking at a 9. The stacking crease is an 8.5. Other types of creasing. And then what I noticed too here on the front before we even flip the book over, I'm trying to find it. It's like down here, there's some, right there by Iron Man's foot. It's almost like something got rolled right on the book, and you can see those little dimples. So I may have to rub my steel balls on it to kind of flatten that out. The back looks okay. Again, nothing really taking it away, as I'm thinking it's already probably an 8.0. And then just the general dirt and other pressable defects, maybe like a 7.5 is probably where I would land. So yeah, I'd probably give this book a 7.5, which I think for the age and this sort of slipping in to this auction, I think that this was a pretty good buy for a book in this condition. So there we go, Iron Man 28 in a 7.5, and I gave it a clean and press indicator. But really solid book. Could definitely make the argument that this is an 8, but I think just the damage to the front, but right in there, I mean, very, very solid with the black background behind the trade, and no real page tearing other than just some general wear and tear on the bottom. So again, I think a 7.5 is a fair grade for that book. Next up is Amazing Spider-Man 325. It's weird. This book sometimes pops up on some hot lists. Not really too much significance here other than we've got Silver Sable, Captain America, Red Skull. This one's really terribly miswrapped here on the bottom. And what's worse is it's miswrapped diagonally, like the top looks okay here. A couple of spine ticks, already thinking, yep, this is one of those 9.0s. Could be a 9.2. I think the back looks all right. Again, just it's going to need a press. All of these books do. It's just some finger bends here and there. Right here on the top, there's also some creasing in there. All of that would have to be kind of put through some steam and pressed out if I wanted to improve the condition. A pretty massive dent right here in the middle. So I don't think it should fall below a 9. It looks pretty clean. I wouldn't necessarily need to clean and press, but just the more I look at it, maybe it is. I think I probably will give it an 8.5 here, right on the edge. There's a problem right there. And down there, we've got a slight dog ear. So I'm going to settle in on an 8.5 on this one. And I'm trying to, again, keep my grading consistent. Like if the last book for Iron Man 28, I was giving a 7.5. I don't think this is an 8.0. I think there are more severe issues with that book, so I think an 8.5 is fair for ASM 325. All right, there it is, Amazing Spider-Man 325, 8.5 with a press indicator on that one. Next is Amazing Spider-Man 291. Again, the big build-up to ASM 298 with the aforementioned McFarlane now jumping into Amazing Spider-Man, but going back in time a little bit from 325 to 291, where we've got a few issues of Spider Slayer. Again, just kind of, to me, these felt like it was sort of filler. It was right after Kraven's Last Hunt. We're building up to McFarlane taking over the art. We've got Venom, and it was like, all right, let's throw some books with Silver Sable, Dr. Octopus, Spider Slayer. Got that great John Romita Jr. face, though. This is the classic, like, I would say when I was really reading Uncanny X-Men with Romita Jr., this is exactly how the characters looked. Just classic Romita Jr. art right there. Pages look to be in good shape, so probably a white pager. Again, stacking crease kind of goes without saying. No real significant color breaking ticks. There's a couple minor ticks right in there now that I look at it a little bit more closely. Very, very slight, like hairline. Probably needs a little bit of a cleanup in here. Just some light dry cleaning with an eraser. Again, just probably in that 8.5 to 9.4 type of range. It's a little bit of a staple push happening down here that I don't like to see. And then just general dirt here. So probably a 9.2 is where I would land on this one. And this book probably maxes out. I'd say 9.6 if I can really improve it. 9.4 to be safe. I just saw another like finger bend related issue right here on the side. I'm still going to leave it 9.2 though. I think that's a fair grade for a book in this condition. I would lean possibly 9.4, but this stack increase is so severe that would have to be dealt with. So there's Amazing Spider-Man 291, 9.2 with that clean and press indicator. Next book is Web of Spider-Man 29. I love this book. I love the tie-in with Spider-Man versus Wolverine, one of my all-time favorite original comic books that I used to carry everywhere. And I absolutely loved that this was like a crossover with that book. Web of Spider-Man specifically, kind of considered a third-tier Spider-Man title at the time, and really just enjoyed the fact that they were giving some attention and recognition to the title and having a star character like Wolverine appear in this book. But specifically, this issue is going to be tough. This one has a really severe crease and fold happening here, so much so that I believe the page is torn. We turn to the inside right there on the edge, tearing right up in here. So right there is a page tear, and it's minor, but there's actually one there and one there. With page tears, it's hard for me to give any book with page tearing a 9.0 or above. I know that it does happen if everything's perfect, but this book is not. There's even some dog earring happening down here. So when I see these page tears in a side like this, I'm thinking, well, this book's going to max 8.5, but it's so creased and damaged. Now it's probably an 8 and working backwards from an 8. The spine structurally looks pretty good. The corners are sharp. So if you're really looking at this half of the book, which is probably what I did in the scan, I'm like, wow, that book looks at least near mint, if not better. Turning things over on the back, again, you're just seeing the impact of the book because of all the creasing here that just, like, the whole book just kind of got folded back and forth. And it's too bad. It's a white pager as well. But yeah, this one's going to be tough. Like I said, I probably work just from the page tears alone as an 8.5. These creases are so bad and are going up and down almost the entire length of the book. Actually, it is creasing up here as well. So then I'm thinking 8, 7.5 probably. The good news is I don't see anything else really that tragic. Another finger bend at the top, and I'm probably landing at a 7.5 on this one. Although the more I look and think, then I'm thinking maybe it's a 7.0. So I'm going to give it a 7.0 just due to the amount of the severe creasing. I mean, these aren't just like little stacking creases. These are like severe like folds that, again, could be buffed out, but with the page tearing that also breaks color here and there, it's just too much for me. So I'm going to give it a 7.0. And this is where my sort of collecting and categorization of grades has changed over time. This book would benefit from a press, but I don't mark it as such because I don't want to spend my time on this book. I probably have, I don't know how many hundreds or 1,000 books that would need my attention before this one. I mean, I don't know what this book maxes at as an 8. Maybe if I get all of the creasing out with just maybe some light waviness to the pages, I don't know. But taking this book from a 7 to an 8, I often say this too. While, yes, you could challenge yourself to improve the book, why not just get a different copy? So disappointed there, but let's try and end on a high note with the last book, Iron Man 123. Awesome cover art by Bob Layton. You've got the characters looking small in that roulette wheel. There's that Melter again, the perfect villain. The Melter's got a weapon. Hopefully it's not like a laser gun, but it's actually something that's going to melt armor. But I always love this, like, tier, I don't even think it's tier B, it's probably tier C rogues gallery for Iron Man, where it felt like he just had these kind of corny villains, but they really lined up with somebody running around in a suit of armor here. You've got Blizzard, Whiplash, and Melter, a fearsome threesome there. So let's take a look at this condition. This is a direct, so really good for 1979 to have a direct copy, and looks nice. At first glance, I see one tick in here. It's not color breaking right in there, or it could be color breaking, but because of the light blue, it's not showing up as much. The top looks really strong for that darker background. A little bit of a fold or crease here, but that could be buffed out with a press. So really strong copy here. Turning it over, again, just some light creasing on the page right in there. Slight stacking crease. Could benefit from just light dry cleaning, but then again, so you look at this book and go, well, is that a 9.8 candidate? Is it a 9.6? Well, we're trying to find the one reason why it wouldn't, and it is down here. There's like a pinhole or some sort of hole in the book. I swear, it's like you're just trying to find the one thing. It's definitely weird. I don't really know how that gets there. It's not one of those typical things that you would see at the bottom of pages where, like, you have these sort of holes that are more natural in the production process. This just happens to be through the back cover there. I would still probably go ahead and wipe this book down and press it, but with that hole in the bottom, it's probably maxing out at like a 9 or a 9.2. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8.5. Well, gosh, the book looks so good otherwise. I think I'm going to go ahead and give it a 9. I'll give it a 9.0. And again, from first glance, when you're looking at like a scan, it looks like a 9.4, 9.6 all day long. But with that hole in the bottom and the additional creasing along the side of that page, down there around the corner, I can't in good conscience put a 9.6 on a book like that. And that's too bad because it's a great, great looking Iron Man book. And I think a book like this would be interesting to send to CGC, where if everything else is perfect, there are no creases, no color breaking ticks. If I could buff out that small tick in the middle of the cover, the back looks super clean, but it just has that tiny hole at the bottom that it's not even tearing through the bottom of the page. It's almost just like somebody put a pin and kind of wiggled it around there just to open up a little hole in the bottom of the back cover. Just how much does that pull down a grade? It's absolutely not a 9.8, but would it be a 9.4? I think it might be. I think it might be. So those are the 5 books. Some more Amazing Spider-Man, yeah, but got a great couple of Iron Man back issues that I didn't have before. And now it's finally time to show the summary of this order from Quality Comics. All right, here it is. Here is the final summary of the auctions I won from Quality Comics on the HipComic selling platform on December 15th, 2022. I had to pay $24.75 to have these books shipped to me, but I was not charged tax, so that helped also keep the overall cost down. It was a $296.53 total, and what I ended up doing is taking the $24.75 and distributing it across all of the books in the total cost, meaning if I won this Web of Spider-Man at auction for $1.04, which now I know why it was only $1, is because of that creasing and folding along the right-hand side of the book, and those couple of page tears that I actually, for $1.04, actually won it for $1.64 because I had to have the book shipped to me and had to pay for shipping, so that I easily divide the shipping cost by the 41 books and add that to my total cost. Now, the one thing that jumps out at me here is this Fantastic Four 87 that Cover Price is reporting is $192, and that's for a near mint 9.0 to 9.4 copy. I don't know how they do that. Believe me, they're not doing this by hand. They're not looking at scans of completed sales. It's probably looking at listing details. So if somebody lists a grade point or I don't even know if they put near mint question mark on the listing and that counts. But I find it to be a little bit ridiculous that the raw books are actually broken out by condition now. They're also stating the most common condition is $14 for this in a VG. But if we're trying to keep things simple, the fine copy is $19 and the very fine is $45. And I guess just to be accurate and fair, I'm going to manually modify this to 19. I'll go back and adjust it later. Everything else, I'm going to go ahead and go with the values. And what we can see here is when we're looking at column AA, this is the raw value add, meaning I took the cost to acquire the book and compared it to the cover price fair market value. So in the example of FF87, cover price is saying it's a $19 book raw. I paid $16.10, so it was a value add of $2.90 to my collection. The overall value add, as driven and powered by the cover price values, was over $400. It's not bad when you're buying this many books and it's like, oh yeah, I'm getting a $3 or $5 bump or $15 bump here. It will add up if you're buying the right books. But my intent is always to consider which books could I grade, and we'll get to those values in a second. But if, in theory, I was to take all of these books, put them for sale online, and accurately describe the grade and what the fair market value is, in theory, I should be able to get FMV. It's not always the case, obviously, about supply, demand, market conditions, and all of that. But as we sit here, the FMV, as being reported by Cover Price, this is the value add. So looking at some of the bigger winners, I talked about this in one of the unboxings, Returnal's number 2 and a 9.4. Even with a fair market value of $74, which I'm going to go ahead and allow in this case because I do believe I have a 9.4 copy, it only cost me $22 to acquire, so that was a $51.90 value add. Now, that book is something I would consider sending into CGC, but still, if you're looking at the raw versus the CGC valued, maybe I just go ahead and consider selling it raw. I'm not a flipper. I'm not necessarily looking to sell all these books. I'm just saying, in general, if you're looking at kind of my process as a way for you to buy low and sell high or consider for grading, this is a book that's kind of on the fence. Like, should I get it graded? Should I not? According to the numbers, you should not. But that was one of the bigger winners from this order. The Iron Man 28 that I just unboxed looks to be about a $33.35 ad, although the fair market value, again, is probably like Fantastic Four. It's being reported at $50 for a near mint, and it's probably a lot less, probably closer to $20 in the 7.5. Only cost me $16.65 to acquire, though. If we head up to some of the Amazing Spider-Man books, as you saw, most of the books here that I won at auction were Amazing Spider-Man. I've got ASM 233 in a newsstand with a $21.90 value add. ASM 205 in a 9.2, a $12.23 value add. ASM 274, $16.90 added. So you can kind of just see as you're glancing through these values that it did ultimately end up in a significant value add across the board. Looks like I had a couple of minor losses here. ASM 310 in a 9.0, I paid $10.09, has an FMV of 9, so it lost $1.09 there. And then ASM 325 that I just opened as well, I paid $12.60. It has a fair market value of about $12, and the 8.5 certainly hurt it there. Now, these are the raw book values. Eternals 11, I just noticed, is also a nice win, 29.27, getting Eternals 11 and number 2 in a 9.4. But I also pressed some of these books, and what I ended up doing is the my grade is actually my final assess grade after pressing. And I'll go over those here in a second. For the CGC values, though, right, there's no reason to say, well, what if these were all 9.4s or what if they're 9.8s? This is what the CGC values are in the assigned grades. And if I trust my grading, which I do, then these are the values. Now, I think what we need to do is look at the summary to see if I were to send all of these books in at the current grades, whether I've pressed them or not. If I sent all 41 books in, does it make sense in terms of the overall CGC value of each of these books, plus the costs and fees to get the books graded, plus shipping and all of that? And I'm going to pause here for a second because, I mean, you see the CGC value in column V, but compared to cost, is this going to be a positive or negative value? I think if you've watched all of the unboxing videos, the books are kind of borderline. Like, would you send any of these in for grading? Like, would you want to have 9.0 and 9.2 slabs of a lot of these ASMs? You're kind of on the fence. It really depends. Does the book have special meaning to you? Were you able to press it into a 9.4 and you just kind of want to encapsulate your work or something like that? So your guess is kind of as good as mine. I haven't looked at this yet, but I'm going to kind of guess that it's probably around a break even or slightly negative. But let's take a look at the overall CGC value. $11.51. So you'd go through all of this to grade, to open, to prep for your auction, to press out, and it's a break even, meaning you'd send all of these books to CGC. You'd get all of them back. And with those final grades, as I've graded them raw, and you try and then sell them online somewhere, and you would get your money back. Now, obviously, depending on where you sell, there's different fees. I don't add selling fees in here because I'm talking about trying to add value and not trying to predict, is it 15%, is it 8%? Am I selling on Instagram where there's no take? You know, it really depends for everybody that's selling, but it's kind of a head scratcher, right? $11.51. I mean, at least it's positive, but now you look at that and go, well, why bother? Like, why go through all of this just to get books that you hope one day to get your money back? And it's a great question. I'm asking myself that very same question. And I have a theory on that, but I first want to show you some of the books, and I think there were maybe 4 that I pressed. Eternals 2 I pressed, and I've got a grade before of 9.0, and I believe I improved that up to a 9.4. There was one fold on the back that prevented me from giving it a 9.6. I thought I had a 9.8 candidate, but I noticed right at the top corner of that book, there was a little bit of a page tear. So I've got some different values that I plug in, and basically a press value change of $1.67 from a CGC 9.0 to a 9.4 of Eternals 2. I think the values of that book, it sort of flattens out around the 9 up to 9.4, and then anything below 9, I don't really think there's any value in that book at all. ASM 310, you're not supposed to do this, but I pressed the 9 into a 9. You're supposed to improve it, but when I took the book out of the press and I looked at it, I'm like, it still looks like a 9.0 to me. I really just couldn't improve it, so that was a wash there. And then I think there were 2 other books that I ended up pressing. Same thing. I pressed ASM 204 from a 9 into a 9.2, and the value change there was negligible or nil. And then the last one that I guess technically was my most successful, I pressed ASM 228 from a 9.2 into a 9.6 with a $13 value increase. So that is the summary. And what are my takeaways here? Certainly, do I want to continue with bidding on these sorts of books? The answer is no. I think that was one of the things that I learned through this process is I don't want these books. And I hate to be that direct and harsh because I love the hobby. I One of my favorite things to do, and I just went through and kind of reorganized my bins, and I love to take out specific bins of the titles that I love. Like I love taking out Amazing Spider-Man, and I have a bin now, issues 1 through 300. I don't have every issue 1 through 300, but in that bin are all issues within that range. And I go through and I finger it. And I love it. And I'm going through and I'm digging through and I'm pulling out issues and I'm looking at the grades I assigned. And it's very fulfilling and very rewarding. And you could say, well, if you want to feel that way, then why wouldn't you continue to buy these books? And you'd be right. Like, that's part of why we collect is we're collectors. We like to have things in sequential order. We like to be completionists. We like to find little pockets of things, storylines, characters, crossovers where we want to collect and we want to own and we feel very proud and of our collection and so on. But in the end, comic book collectors are typically frugal, but you have to balance that mindfulness of what you're spending with the values of the collectible. I think that it's just something that we all know is there. We have to recognize the fact that these collectibles have value. And if you're not analyzing the books this closely, then you are in danger of losing money. Now, you could just say, this is my entertainment. This is my hobby. It doesn't matter to me. I want to read the stories. You should talk more about the stories and the characters and get away from spreadsheets. I get that and I respect that opinion. And that's perfectly fine. But you just can't deny the fact that there's a lot of money in this hobby. And what was the point of all of this? Why was I bidding? I really felt like I could have a process, and I tried this with third-party pressers, but I could really develop a process where I could target 8.5s to 9.2s and improve them all the way up to a 9.6. I think that a lot of these books could potentially have value. I think that if you can get them over the 9.4 hump, then you really start to see, okay, these may not be $300 9.8s, but they could be $80 9.6s. And if I'm investing $3, $4, $5 plus another $15 to $20 to press, plus another $25 to grade, you're conservatively making somewhere between $20 to $30 a book. Multiply that by 40. Not a bad investment, in my opinion. Now, it didn't work out that way, though, and that was something that I had to learn through this process. Is HipComic and Quality Comics specifically going to be a significant source for where I acquire comic books? And the answer is no. The weird part is it seems like I should be saying yes. It feels like, yes, I bought 41 comics, but if I maybe bought 5 or 6, I wouldn't have spent as much money and I could have more of a manageable amount of books that I would want to clean it and press and things like that. But you're still left with a 9 or a 9.2 in what I would consider to be kind of like filler books or books that you would be adding to a run. I think Collector Auctions commented on this as kind of this is what his assessment was, and I totally agree. This absolutely feels like filler, but not filler necessarily in a bad way. I would still argue that this is high-grade filler. But the problem is if you're just looking at the grades and not examining the numbers, then you could say high-grade filler and it feels positive, but then you look at the values and you say high grade filler, not so much, because from a professionally graded standpoint, this was all just an exercise to break even. But I think my key takeaways here is one, I've definitely come up with, I think, what is an average grade of these books that Quality Comics is basically setting aside to get rid of. I don't think I honed in on that value of the average grade there as I was showing you the spreadsheet, but it ended up being 8.85 across this order. Now, there were a few 7s and 7.5, so some outliers there, but I was targeting books that I thought looked like they had the potential to be somewhere between a 9.2 and a 9.6, and then I adjusted my maximum bid for the 8.5 to 9.2 range. And that's kind of where it ended up, 8.85 across the 41 books. So I learned what is kind of the typical or expected grade across a significant number of comics. I also learned that as tempting as it is to bid on these books, I'm not going to do this anymore. I also learned that I don't like buying this many comics at once. It takes me a long time to actually go through. I will not allow myself to put these books in my personal collection anymore without grading them. They have to be cataloged. And because I forced myself through this process, I don't like these large orders. I really don't. I prefer smaller, more strategic and precise orders. And then the last thing, it's really making me consider, where do I get my 9.8s from? Where do I get my true high grade books that don't require a lot of effort from? And I have some in my mind that, really might be my only sources that I shop at going forward. I've done all of this unboxing and all of this research, and I've got 100 different places I've purchased comics from and what the average grade is and all of that. And in the end, I think it boils down to just buying kind of from the best source. If you can't go out to a show, or you don't have an LCS that's your honey hole that's got all of these great books for like $1 to $5 that are worth 50 or 100, and if you do, fantastic, keep going there, don't buy online. But for those of us that have to buy online, and a lot of times with poor scans or sight unseen books, you have to find reputable sellers. And I can probably at this point count on one hand the resources that I'm going to look to buy and acquire comics from going forward. Thank you for hanging in there for this entire journey. I think my next set of unboxing videos are going to be of the smaller variety as I move away from HipComic. I still have some. I've still participated in some recent auctions, but I think from this point forward, I'll be looking at some other sources, so you'll be able to see more of where I'm buying from now as I move forward. But I hope that you learned something along the way too, in terms of just, staying grounded and setting expectations properly. I think in this day and age of 9.8s or bust and pressing and cleaning, a lot of it just seems magical. A lot of it seems like, well, I can just get this book off of eBay and turn it into a 9.8 and make $500. And in many, many cases, that's not the case. And I really, really look at this almost like stepping into a casino where you could sit down at a machine, put a few bucks in it, and win the jackpot. And you feel like, I'll just do this every time. But the harsh reality is you're probably wandering around going from machine to machine and losing money, or you end up just kind of being happy that you're getting your money back. And if it's just for entertainment's sake, then by all means, enjoy it. But if you are looking to gamble with your investment, I don't know if winning auctions like this is the best use of your time and money. Thank you for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.